Hello, everyone. I am so excited today because I have something special. See, there's somebody on the screen. We will get to him. This is Achaibo Clinical, and the purpose of this group here is to inspire, uplift, and share great ideas. And for those of you who have not met me, I'm Tengu. I am the founder of Achaibo Clinical. I'm passionate about two things: clinical trials and success mindset training. The purpose of this talk today is about mentorship because I know that in the clinical trials industry, there are amazing minds. And mentorship is very important in terms of our growth. So today I have someone amazing. Jik and I met a while back. Oh my God. And we've just been going back and forth. Jik has a phenomenal company. What inspired me and really caused me to invite Jik? This has been in the making. We kept talking to each other. We're like, okay, and now it's finally happening, is because, there are people who are just relentless. Like those are the people who inspire me in my life, the people who are relentless, who do not give up, who keep going. And so Jik is a stellar member of the clinical trials industry. And I'm going to start by introducing him. We will talk more about him. So Jik his full name is Djikolngar, but also known as Jik or Dr. Mayo. And he's the founder and president of Pyrodex LLC. And he has extensive academic and industrial experience in research and development, integrative physiology, microbiology, molecular and cell physiology. And he focuses on testing services for monocyte activation tests. And he will explain it further to you. Dr. Mayo is like super brilliant because he's developed and optimized processes for a short turnaround to accelerate the manufacturing and regulatory decisions that are related to batch release and commercialization of therapeutic products. He has served as an external member of the Johns Hopkins Institutional Biosafety Committee for more than 10 years, guys. This is huge. Dr. Mayo enjoys nonfiction. We have that in common. Reading world history. We have that in common. Civilizations, biblical theology. Hey, we have that in common, and organizational dynamics. He's been in the clinical trials industry for 15 years, you guys, worked with Lonza Bioscience and so many biotechs. And the main takeaway is that they tested medical, injectable drugs, and implantable devices for safety, specifically evaluating the contents of substances known as pyrogens that cause fevers, sepsis, multiple organ failure, and death. And he helps drug makers to get safer therapeutic products to their customers and accelerates commercialization. So his focus is on healthcare at affordable cost because it's critical for everything, you guys, in the community and at the national level. And he loves to play roles in world-class science and technology. So without further ado, I am excited to have Dr. Mayo, or Jik to me, join us today. So Jik, before I'm starting, are you looking forward to this interview?
Always like to share what I have with others. So interview or what, I'm ready.
Absolutely. So before getting into the questions, I just want people to know more, not just about your brilliant mind and what you've been able to do. So two things. Can you break down for a simpleton, because many of our members are excited about this industry, but they don't really know. Can you just give a very simple layman breakdown of what you do? Because I know for people who don't know what Pyrodex does, just what you do, why it's important, and how it actually ties into the greater clinical trials landscape.
I am interested in clinical trials and mostly in healthcare because everybody needs health care, but the cost of healthcare is very, very high. And one of the reasons of this high cost is the significant failure in drug development. So for one drug that gets to the market, you have 9 that fail. And so those 9 that fail are costly, as well as the one that get to the clinical trial, to the market. And so companies have to really make some decision and some of very hard business decisions to really recover from the 9 drugs that fail in clinical trials, mostly phase 1, phase 2, even phase 3 of clinical trials. And for phase 1 to the launch, the success rate is 7%. From phase 2 to the clinical trial, to the launch, to the commercialization, the success rate is 24%. And when you get to the phase 3, that you said, oh, maybe everything is okay, and so on and so on. And yet, at this level, in some field, the success rate is around 60%. And so you have a significant loss in drug development. And this loss is not just for the companies, but also for the individuals at the end of the production. The users, they pay for it. And so I thought, and how can I help companies to improve their success rate so that the drugs that get into the clinical trial succeed? And one of the issues in the clinical trials is safety.
Yeah.
And for all the clinical trial failures, 79% of failures are associated with safety or efficacy.
Yeah.
And so if the safety is an issue, how good your drug may be, you cannot detect it because the efficacy is only valid when the drug is safe.
Absolutely.
And when the drug is not safe, you don't know whether your drug is efficacious.
Yeah.
And so that's why I thought the main things to focus on is to make sure that the drugs that get to the market are safer than they have been.
Yeah.
And most of the technologies that are out there are mostly targeting known safety problems, known contaminants.
Yeah.
And so they target those contaminants. And those contaminants cannot be detected, can be detected by what is known today. But those technologies are not sufficient to cover all the contaminants that affect the quality of drugs or medical devices. And I thought, God has equipped me to really be able to provide a tool for companies to make sure that the drugs that they get to the patients, whether in clinical trial, in the drugstores or pharmacies, are safer than they have been. And so there is no need to recall for drugs or whatever, but make sure that they get there, they are safe, and so on. So that's why I decided to get to the market. But also I feel that I have the social responsibility to really help companies. Yeah. Because one drug that failed is not only the failure at the end of the game, but also the scientists who work on it. All the folks who invest in clinical trials, the nurses, the physicians, all those folks, is their time that is going to be lost because the drug was not safe due to the contaminations. So I thought that most of the clinical trials failed, not because of the inefficacy of the drugs or in terms of the devices. It's not necessarily the engineering design flaws, but mostly due to these contaminants that remain undetected by the current technologies.
Wow.
And if I can offer that service to others would be great. And also, the notion that if you sterilize your system, they are safe, it's not true, because you can kill the bacteria, but the bacteria left their footprint. And those footprints that are responsible for the sepsis and fevers and so on. And so you boil your product or you put them in a different type of sterilization, and you said, oh, the cells are dead, and bacteria, there is no growth on the petri dish, but you don't know whether the leftover, the byproduct of dead bacteria are still present to cause you the problem.
Yeah.
And I can detect that.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm in the business. So simple to make sure that people get safer drugs for better treatment and saving more lives. That's it.
That's fantastic. And what I really like about this is that it's the fine-tuning of detection. I mean, we're getting to a period where to detect things, you cannot just rely on the current detection tools that we have right now. Like you mentioned, just because you're under the microscope, the petri dish looks empty, it doesn't mean that the footprints are not there. And I like that you have a product that is so fine-tuned that it can actually detect the bacteria way before we actually get to the point where you're looking at it in that petri dish. So I really like that. So the other thing that I wanted people to know about you is that my question was, why are you so passionate about this field, Jake? I know that I am, and I know that you are, but I want people to know why you're passionate about it.
I'm passionate about it because I'm a scientist by training. It's a good science. It's just pure good science that really reflects the physiology, the biology of living systems, and also it covers every single thing that you can think of that is susceptible to cause fever, sepsis, or organ failure. So I developed what I call agnostic technology by detection. So most of the technologies that are out there today require a prior knowledge of the contaminant. And you design the technology, whether it's a PCR or either it's an immunoassay, you have to design the antibodies, you have to design such and such in order to detect that particular thing.
Yeah.
But for me, all those things are not necessary. But if the product that is susceptible to cause this fever is present, I would detect it.
That is so amazing. That is so amazing, Jake. I think that's why I really admire you for what you're doing, because you are living in the world that is to come. And I talk about this all the time on this platform. You always have to reach for something higher. You looked at what is currently not working and you're already preempting what's going to come in the future, because with the way that things are going, why not have something that is from the source that can detect anything versus constantly creating new products to detect specific things, right? So I think that's what I really, I really enjoyed that. And so if for somebody who is maybe new to this industry and who doesn't understand why this industry is really important, what would you say to them from your perspective, Jake? What would you say to them?
So it's not that we do clinical trials, this particular industry, we do clinical trials for the fun of doing clinical trials. The clinical trials are required to make sure that the drugs, the medical devices that are going to be put into use for public health are safe and efficacious. And so it's not that those who are involved in clinical trial just want to do things for the sake of doing things and going on, but it's required by law. And it's required by law for one reason. There are some scientists, there are some people who are very serious about what they're doing. But also you have those who want to make money. And so they cut corners. And so those clinical trials are set to really make sure that the public health is protected.
Yeah.
And so for that reason, we have all those clinical trials. But also for a scientist, you can develop a very good product in the lab.
Mm-hmm.
But when you take to the real field
Mm-hmm.
of clinical trial or testing or people who are in deep need, you find out very quickly
Mm-hmm.
that it works or it doesn't work. But the idea is that 75% of successful tests in the lab did make it
Yeah.
to the
Yeah,
field.
we see it all the time. Yep.
Yeah.
True.
And so the clinical trials are very, very critical
Mm-hmm.
to make sure that the drugs that get to people
Mm-hmm.
are really, really helpful to save lives, to
Mm-hmm.
heal people who are suffering.
Yeah.
So we are not doing things just to please ourselves or to, yes, we like what we're doing, but we like to the end product,
Yeah.
saving lives,
Yeah.
because we believe that lives is important.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
any country, any
Yeah.
community who is healthy has a basis to develop more.
Yeah.
But community that suffer from health issues and so on cannot really spend their time trying to develop other new things.
Absolutely. You know, Jake, I have to get your thoughts on this. You know what I do, you know what I'm passionate about, training clinical research professionals and expanding the number of clinical trial sites. And people like you, there are not too many of us in this industry. I mean, of African descent, I mean, there are not too many of us. So what would you say would be, because just from the way that you're speaking, and let me back up a little bit. I'm in clinical operations, and Jik is in. These are the clinical scientists. They do all the science. We run the operations to make sure that their dreams come true. For real, this is really what we do. Clinical operations takes Jik's dreams, and we run it through our whole pipeline to make sure that it actually comes true. So, Jik, what would you say for, especially, I want to speak to those of us who are of African descent, especially those on the continent and in the diaspora. What I've found is that the more because I run trials globally, and the more professionals from a specific country, the more that they're involved, it translates down to more patients, more clinical trial sites involved in it, and more patient exposure. So what would you share with us regarding that? I mean, in terms of our participation, particularly in Africa and in the diaspora, either becoming clinical research professionals or just being in this industry, so that we can start having more clout and having our patients also benefit from these resources. I just want to get your thoughts on that.
I think we come to a point where it's time, at least for Africans of the diaspora, to think about transitioning and to really take back this knowledge, this experience, and use that in the African continent to really make sure that our systems work for the benefit of the people.
Yeah.
I'm talking as if I'm a Democrat or whatever politician. It's about human beings.
Yeah.
And we know some of us come from small villages. Some of them come from big cities and so on. But we know that there are some people who would benefit a lot from all the experience that we have gathered, and really try to see how we're going to take it back. Take it back maybe as individuals is always very complicated, but to form this kind of consortium of core group where we can find some experts who can help each of us, or in those kind of big projects that we can really help to reshape I would say, healthcare industry in Africa. Most of countries depend on Europe, but how long are we going to keep doing that? We have learn from others, and it's time to maybe help to develop national organizations at the Pan-African level, so that we can be independent and start to really have our own economy, rely on our own development, and so on. And it's kind of very pitiful to hear that only South Africa is able to have a manufacturing plant to really develop a COVID vaccine. You know, we should have 2 or 3 places to help with those things in Africa, but we're still very, very far.
Yeah, we'll still be. And a company like yours, I mean, Pyrodex, I think people should listen to this interview over and over. I highly recommend it, and listen to what you said earlier about detecting mechanisms. It's so important, because what you're doing is something that is so valuable. And already in the West, a lot of the structures are already in place. But when you have a place where a lot of those red tape things are not there, and you can start and really help people and helps companies to have, detection way earlier, so that we can have great products to the market, it just makes a big difference. So, Djik, I'm going to segue here. I want to talk about mentoring, because the whole purpose of us is that we believe nobody stands alone, right? We all have great mentors. So who have been some great mentors in your life, and how have they helped you to grow? Besides the one big mentor.
Yes.
The source. The source is the ultimate mentor. Go ahead. Let's just get that out there, right? God, the source, is the ultimate mentor. Then humans. Who has been yours?
It's very hard to tell. I grew up, I don't know how did that happen, but I was obsessed with knowledge early on. And my parents couldn't really figure out how to deal with me.
Oh boy.
And so I didn't have a school in my village at that time. And so because I cried every day, it takes 5 miles or so by foot to go to the nearby school. And it's too much for a 6-year-old boy, So finally, and also at that time, it's important to have enough strength to defend yourself, because they are bullying everywhere.
Oh yeah.
So I was always interested in knowing things. I didn't really think that I'm going to be a biologist or I want to be somebody. I just want to know things for the sake of knowing them. But I would say that there are some people who intervene in my life at specific time that really make a transition. I would say my elementary school teacher, that was the first one, who was so optimistic about me that he said that one day, he said that to go to the elementary school that year, if I fail because I am nervous or whatever, he would do everything for me to go to to middle school at that time. And he said, if there is only one person who should go to the middle school, it should be me. And I don't know exactly why he did that, but he was so convinced that I am something or something. And he was very, very optimistic about me and gave me a lot of strength since then. And I think the other people who really, I would say, they're not my mentors, but they have some kind of indirect influence of me, or people who taught me. I think my my French teacher who taught me, I think, the structure of language, and she wanted to make sure that I master how to study a text. And that has been very helpful for me even later on in life, that when I read a scientific paper, all those things come naturally to me to see, oh, that's an issue, that's a problem, and so on. And so we have those people who train me early on, but really don't think that it's going to maybe last so much, but have some impact on me. But I think my my PhD advisor, I would say, was also very helpful. He was one of those guys that people don't want to work with, because they say, why do you want to work with this professor? Because he's the one who can put you down in a research seminar. I said, I'm going to work in academia, and I may meet somebody like him, so why not start with him? and we still are friends to this day.
Yeah.
And so the first day that I got into his lab, he said, Jik, we're here at the frontier of knowledge, and you certainly are going to know more than I do, and but you should not be afraid to tell me that I'm wrong.
Oh, yeah.
And so, but we have a very good relationship so far, and he's been very helpful. So there are people who in academic area have been very helpful at that point. But I think the drive to know things for the sake of knowledge, to get it right, that I think is inspired by, as you put it,
the source.
The source has been very, very helpful.
Yeah.
And I said, the knowledge that I have is for the world.
Didn't understand that.
Sure.
For the world, it's not for me.
Sure.
And so I'm able to share with others freely as I could.
Yeah. Talking about the source, Siri comes up sometimes, like, sometimes like, oh, that is the source maybe speaking to me. I heard Siri, I'm like, I didn't understand that.
And so, yeah, so I have few people who help me in life, but I think the God himself provide. I have not run out of ideas in science so far.
Yes.
And I have to just say, wait a minute, I have to really make some priorities.
Yeah. I talk about that a lot. In fact, our series that is coming up on habits, I talk about meditation, and that you have to go into the silence, and you have to communicate with the divine, because if you're only relying on this world, then you're only going to get the ideas of the world, and they're already old. Those are old ideas.
Yes.
So you have to go back to a different level so that you can get the new ideas to come through. And I've built this whole company on that, So, Jik, that said, 2 last questions for you. The first one is, where do you see Pyrodex 5 to 10 years? Fingers crossed you're in Africa working with different sponsors.
In Africa, I thought, so first of all, I would like to change the industry. I would like to change the Western industry, the way they think currently. And it's kind of too ambitious for somebody like me coming from the third world country and living here.
It is not.
But I thought, there are so many things that need to get fixed.
Yeah.
And who am I to think that way? Because I am God's servant.
Mm-hmm.
And I have the ability, the knowledge to do that. And I know the issues.
Yeah.
So how I'm going to see what Pyrodex is going to become in the next 5, 10 years, I thought I would be in a position to flip the industry.
Yes.
And that's what I believe in. And
Yeah.
I'm working on it.
Yeah. You reach critical mass because, you know, there is a saying that I talked about from Tony Robbins, which says you work in private and the public will reward you. And I'm on the same page as you. What I do here is a divine mission for me. Like if you're doing it for just to make money, it really, yes, the money does come, right? But
Yeah.
it's the underlying, what do we have to allow ourselves to participate in this industry from your vantage point, you know, getting to that critical mass and flipping the industry, or by having engaging conversations and educating people and letting them come into this industry and understand what it's about. It's just wonderful. So my last question is that this is just a doozy, like we would say.
Mm-hmm.
So what keeps you going, Jake? Like when you face those challenges, what keeps you going no matter what? What is your way of thinking? You know, you know, that way somebody can hear this and it might help them as well. What keeps you going? Because owning a business and doing what you do in this industry, I mean, from personal experience, it can be quite challenging. I mean, they're good challenges, right? But what keeps you going no matter what happens?
I feel this is a mission. It's not just yeah, as you said, it's a business. I feel it as a mission.
Mm-hmm.
And but also to see at the end of the tunnel that more lives would be saved.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And protecting the job of scientists, protect the families,
Yeah.
and improving the healthcare. Those are things that really drives me.
Oh wow. Enough said, Jake. I am so, again, I would want to thank you for just speaking with me. Guys, Jake is so inspiring. I mean, this quiet energy and just a mind that you will not even imagine. And so we're going to include all of Jake's contact information for those of you, the sciencey people out there. He's going to have how he's on LinkedIn. He has a website. So if you want to know more about his company and what he does, we will put all that information there. But Jake, for my part, I just want to thank you for this interview. And you know, I'm just so honored to take the time to speak with you today. And for you, you're so busy to take the time to speak with us. And I look forward to more. And we'll have Jake featured again in a few months just to check in and see how things are going at Pyrodex. Okay. Thank you so much, Jake. And it was a wonderful interview. It finally happened, and I am so delighted. I cannot wait for feedback from our audience. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Bye.
Bye.